Good afternoon, I'm Raine Musñgi. This is Newsfeed. Philippine stocks closed the week strong, still riding on the euphoria sparked by the Federal Reserve's move to start cutting interest rates. The blue chip index added 50 points or 0.7% to finish the week up by more than 3%. The PSEi touched the 7,300 level during the session before a surge in profit-taking trimmed its gains. The financials counter was the clear outperformer for the day, rising 2.25%, led by a rally in Metro Bank and Bank of the Philippine Islands. Value turnover ballooned to 17 billion pesos. Gainers dominated losers 130 to 77.
What happened with the Fed cutting 50 bips, it clearly signaled that there's a risk on for risk assets. Clearly equities, including the PSEi for the emerging markets. We've seen this impact on the dollar, the weakness of the dollar, contributing to the strength of the peso.
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas slashes the reserve requirement ratios of local banks. The BSP announces a 250 basis point cut in the RRR of universal and commercial banks, as well as non-bank financial institutions with quasi-banking functions. Digital banks will also see a 200 basis point reduction in their RRR to 4%, while the figure for thrift banks will be lowered by 100 basis points to 1%. The reserve requirement of rural and cooperative banks will be removed entirely. The RRR is the percentage of deposits that banks must keep as standby funds and are not allowed to lend out. The adjustments, which take effect on October 25, aim to encourage banks to reduce fees on small value transactions. Heading now to Malaysia as we look at a case with eerie similarities to a controversy involving religious leader Apollo Kibuloy here at home. Authorities arrest the chief executive of an Islamic conglomerate accused of running charity homes where children were allegedly sexually abused. Nasiruddin Mod Ali, the head of Global Ikhwa Services and Business, has been linked to a banned religious sect. He has denied allegations of widespread abuse at youth care homes, but he did acknowledge cases of sodomy occurred. Last week, police rescued more than 400 children from the homes run by GISB, but the company denies running the shelters. From one sexual abuse case to another, having lost his attempt to secure bail, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs will spend time at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. The prison has held high-profile figures, including Sam Bankman-Fried and Ghislaine Maxwell. The 54-year-old Combs faces 3 criminal charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering. He denies all charges against him and has pleaded not guilty in a Manhattan federal court. A warning from former U.S. President Donald Trump as he courts Jewish American voters. The Republican presidential candidate warns Israel will cease to exist if he does not win the race to the White House. Trump also blaming his rival, Vice President Kamala Harris, for what he calls an explosion of anti-Semitism in recent years.
If I do win, Israel will be safe and secure, and we will stop the toxic poison of anti-Semitism from spreading all over America and all over the world. We'll get it stopped. But if I don't win, I believe Israel will be eradicated, and you can't let that happen, and I don't think you will let that happen.
The worst drought on record to hit the Amazon is taking its toll on dolphins. As waters in lakes dry up, the dolphins are dying. On average, researchers say 1 corpse is found on the sandbank in a day. But it's not just dolphins that are suffering. Riverine communities across the Amazon are also stranded by the lack of transport on waters too shallow for boats. Their floating houses are also now on solid ground. Heading to the UK now, where conservationists have declared a butterfly emergency. They're raising the alarm over the dwindling number of butterflies found in the country, down 81% from last year's count, the lowest in 14 years. Aside from climate change, experts are also blaming changes in land use and agricultural practices, including pesticides.
We've got about 20,000 species of insects in the UK. The butterflies are just the largest, most visible, most easily identified ones. So when their populations are crashing, that should really be a big wake-up call that something is seriously wrong with the state of our environment.
Climate change also taking a heavy toll on Tunisia's beekeeping industry. Local beekeepers say rising temperatures and prolonged droughts are threatening bee populations and honey production across the country. Last year alone, one beekeeper says he lost 65 beehives, or about 70% of his total stock. A never-before auction painting by French Impressionist Claude Monet from his Water Lily series is expected to break records at an auction in Hong Kong next week. Painted 125 years ago, Newsfeed is estimated to fetch between $25 and $35 million. It remained within Monet's family for decades after his death in 1926, ending up in a private collection before being consigned to Christie's. Vincent van Gogh's moored boats will also hit the auction block for the first time in 3 decades. It's expected to fetch between $30 and $50 million.
The purpose of this auction is to celebrate art, to celebrate artists, and to show actually that art doesn't have boundaries.
London's Oxford Street could soon go traffic-free. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan wants the street to be pedestrianized, banning all vehicles from passing to attract more shoppers. If approved, Oxford Street would join other major shopping hubs like Times Square in New York and La Rambla in Barcelona that have gone fully traffic-free.
We'll be consulting about spaces to lock up your bikes. We'll be consulting about the side roads where people can, and the taxis can drop off those people who are visiting who may be disabled, for example. We'll be working with TfL and residents to make sure there are bus stops near that part of the street that's pedestrianised. The great news is, since I last announced these plans, we've had one of the world's finest, if not the world's finest, rail lines opening up, the Elizabeth line.
A previous version of the plan was blocked by the local Westminster City Council, but it was revived after receiving the backing of Britain's Deputy Prime Minister. So far, the plan is getting mixed reactions from locals.
Terrible. I think it's a terrible idea. You know, you need buses, don't you? How are you going to get from one end to the other? Crazy idea. 100% against it.
I think it'd be a huge benefit for shoppers. I think it'd be great to get rid of all of the vehicles on the street, just so there's more space to walk.
And before we go, here's a look at today's market winners and losers. And those are the news this hour. I'm Raine Musñgi. Stay tuned to BNC on Free TV Channel 31, Channel 24, on Signal, and on our website, bnc.ph. Thank you so much for watching.